Hello everybody, it's Michael Hollands once again for Sound of the Movies. Today I have the pleasure to once again be joined by Steve Jablonsky. On today's episode, we will focus on his latest efforts, Bloodshot and Spenser Confidential. Welcome back, Steve.
Thanks, Michael. Nice to talk to you again.
It's great to have you back on my show, and thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule. And Steve, Bloodshot is
Yeah,
based on the Valiant comics, and it is
yeah.
about an elite soldier who is killed and then brought back to life. How did you gear up
Right.
for this musical mission?
The way it was introduced to me was the director, who I had never met. I found out he was a fan of mine, and he made contact through my agents and sent me a presentation, like a video thing that he put together. It was him on camera talking about the character and showing just various images, and it was almost like a PowerPoint presentation about what he was going to do with this character. I'd never seen anything quite like that. I was really impressed with this guy, how smart he was, and how just for this is his first major studio film, and it sounded like he's directed 100 films already. So I really wanted to meet him and talk about the character, and I did. We actually had a Skype call. He was filming at the time, and he described the character to me and the tragedy of what's happening to this guy, which is what interested me. Kind of, he's a superhero and he's got these superpowers, but he didn't ask for them. He doesn't know why he has them. He doesn't even know who he is in the early part of the film, and the film he's just trying to figure all these things out. So we approached it from that standpoint. I know how to do action music and all that, but I thought, let me see what else I can do with this character, and hopefully bring out the deeper parts of the story rather than just treat it as a typical action movie.
How would you describe the perfect sound for a soldier, basically a machine now who is able to heal instantly? How did you combine comic book elements with sci-fi elements, if you will?
That's a great question. So just the way the early footage I saw, and just the way the film looked and felt, for some reason I gravitated towards rhythmic things as opposed to like big thematic horn themes, for example, that you might expect in a quote superhero movie. But because you nailed the perfect word there, machine. He is Once he goes into bloodshot mode, he is basically a machine that will not stop until he achieves what he's trying to achieve. And so I created this rhythmic motif, I guess you could call it, that the director nicknamed the Bloodshot Train, which I thought was funny. And but it's accurate. It's like his motor is going, and because he goes on several missions throughout the film, and when he starts each mission, we start the rhythm kind of small, and then builds and builds as he gets closer and closer to his targets. And I just, for whatever reason, I found that to be kind of more appropriate for this particular character, and it seemed to work with Vin Diesel and his sort of intensity and the way he does things, and the director responded to it as well. So that's the way we went, and there are horn. There's a kind of a brass line that comes in, these swells as he's you know punching people and doing all these things. But the core of it is a rhythmic thing, kind of like his internal motor driving him, because it is all of his power comes from within all the little nanobots that are in his blood.
He at first doesn't quite know what's real and what's not anymore.
Right.
How did you experience this state of mind, and how did you score it?
Yeah, that's one of the more interesting things about the film, that he doesn't know who he is, and he's having these weird flashes of of a woman that he comes to realize is his wife, and then he flashes to her being murdered, and he sort of puts all these pieces together. And what the director and I talked about doing was the quieter moments when he's by himself and thinking about all of this stuff that's happening to him, trying to work it all out. we wanted those moments to be really just sort of the opposite of the action moments. So I did a very simple piano theme. It's actually a good combination of guitars and synths, but I call it piano because everybody thinks it sounds like a piano. So that's um, but just to really yeah, it's funny as a composer, you spend all this time trying to create a unique sound, and it just becomes the piano theme. But yeah, so when he's by himself, it's this little emotional but very simple melody. It's but again very simple, just as he's in his own head trying to figure these things out. So that and the director liked that contrast of, you know, when he really starts kicking in and he's having these visions and he can't stop himself, then we get to go really big. But yeah, I liked the moments with Vin, you know, in his own head. I thought he I'm not sure he's done that sort of thing before in his career. I thought he pulled it off pretty well.
Steve, in this day and age, what do you think the audience expects to see and to hear when they go to see a movie like Bloodshot? What is the cinematic language of today to you?
Another good question. You mean well, visually, I would think they expect to see amazing, crazy visual effects, which this film definitely has. I didn't get to see them until very late because, but at the premiere, I saw the final things, and I think when he really does flourish in the bloodshot and things are flying around him, it's pretty great. So I think audiences these days, they've come to expect that. 20 years ago, it was sort of new, and you could impress audiences a bit more easily than you can now, I think.
Yeah.
But musically, I'm not sure. I would think they probably would expect, you know, like a big Marvel-esque horn theme or something like that. I'm not entirely sure, but I perhaps the audience members who know this character wouldn't expect that because he does. There is this layer of I call it tragedy. I don't know if they would, if the fans of the comic would, but just, you know, he's being manipulated to think that his wife has been murdered. So he's just in this constant state of you know, rage and sadness as he's trying to figure out all these different people that he thinks have killed his wife. So that's why we kind of didn't take it to a big, you know, big epic. Well, the score is big, but I didn't want to make it too overly. I don't know what the word is, honestly. Marvelesque, I guess. You
Yeah,
know,
that's a good way of describing it,
I don't
yeah.
know if that's not that that's a bad thing. I think that
No.
the scores are great in those films. There, but in this case, it just felt wrong. And I tried it. I tried just to see what it would feel like, kind of bigger themes and bigger lines. And even the director said that, he would always point them out and go, "Yeah, that doesn't feel quite right." So we would always tone it back and just try to keep it a little bit more real, I guess is the word, rather than sort of over the top. And because he doesn't fly around and he doesn't do things quite as like comic booky as you know, Iron Man or some of these other characters. He's a bit more grounded in reality, even though he's got super strength and all this other stuff. So that's what we did. We did the same with the score. Tried to keep it a little bit more subdued in places and a bit more realistic, I guess.
And Steve, films are so technologically advanced these days. And what does technology mean to you in terms of scoring? How do you create and use contemporary sounds?
Yeah, that I have a lot of fun doing that. I could tell you that's a lot of my time early in a movie. If it's this kind of movie, if it's a film that calls for sort of contemporary modern electronic type sounds, a lot of the time, a lot of my time early in the process is just making sounds and seeing what fits with the images. And like you said, the technology now, I could sit down with a laptop and a few plugins and just mess around and go, oh, that's a cool bass. I'll put that in the bass folder and put you know, that the rhythm, the main rhythm I talked about earlier, that's made from that was made in a plugin, a synthesizer plugin. And so I think that's kind of, I get called a lot for this kind of film because I've done a lot of that throughout my career. And this director like many others, it said, "Yeah, I love the sounds. The way you add all these crazy sounds in with orchestra and all these things." So that's often when I get hired, they expect that, and I know that going in. So I focus some of my time creating sounds. I have a few hardware synthesizers in my studio that I'm looking at right now, but a lot of it is done in the computer. It's just so easy to manipulate things quickly, and everything is savable. Often with a hardware synth, you might lose a sound that you've made, you know, but everything is saved on the computer, and I just spend endless hours tinkering around with sounds. But yeah, I have fun with it, and that's. But yeah, I think I've been sort of known more and more for that sort of thing. So that's a lot of the jobs I get are the directors want that kind of sound.
You use the technologically advanced sample library, but you also try to kind of keep it quote unquote real by also using the real gear, the hardware.
A lot of the kind of lower end sounds I'll keep in my hardware synths because they have a sort of warmth to them. But the my answer probably would have been different 10 years ago, but now these companies have made virtual versions of so many synthesizers that sound so good that you can get it to a point within the computer that it sounds, almost as good as the real thing. It does take some processing, and then I always hand my music to my mix engineer who makes it sound even better. So by the time it's gone through all these hands, it sounds pretty close to the original thing. But yeah, there's like I have a Moog that you can't really beat that bass sound. So I often that thing will shake the theater seats. So I always go to that if I need low end punch. And there's just some things that hardware is always going to be better. And plus, it's fun to just walk over to my hardware, to my synthesizer rack, and just start messing around. Get me away from the computer for an hour or two.
The film's hero, the Vin Diesel character in Bloodshot, he's a superhero. He's complex. He's also complicated, but also emotional. And but how do you try to make the audience feel empathy for the character, and how do you kind of underscore the vulnerability of the character?
In this film, we have a couple themes for that. One of them I referenced it earlier, the little piano theme. I called it Bloodshot's moody theme because it's when he's sort of being moody and thinking about his life and what's going on. And there's also a love theme because we do meet his wife at the beginning of the film, and we see her get murdered. Spoiler, I don't know how spoilers work on your show, but I think maybe you see that in the trailer. But then and then it's the vengeance of trying to figure out who killed her is what drives him through the film. But so we have those two themes that we kind of thread throughout, and you just hopefully between Vin's performance and the music, the simple kind of emotional music, you hope the audience will connect with that part of the story, with his loss and his sense of revenge. And one of my favorite scenes is, I won't give it all away, but it's when he kind of figures out what's going on with his wife, and we bring back the love theme and we play it normally like, oh, okay, it's going to be okay. And then as we realize it's not going to be okay, that we start to twist the love theme a bit. And that kind of thing is always fun. And so I don't know, hopefully, you never know, but hopefully it helps the audience connect with this part of the story. Because to me, it's the most interesting part. The Bloodshot kicking butt is cool, and that's probably what most people want to see. But I like that it's got these other elements to it.
Great, thank you very much for elaborating on that, Steve. And
Sure.
now I would love to talk about Spenser Confidential, which, if I'm not mistaken, marks the fourth collaboration with director Peter Berg. The film is
That's right. Yeah.
the film is now available on Netflix, and you had previously worked with him on Battleship, Lone Survivor, and Deepwater Horizon. So 8 years of collaboration.
Yeah.
A good director composer collaboration and relationship has always been essential to filmmaking and to storytelling in particular. And
Nice.
how do you two work together in order to, let's say, tell the story through images and also music?
It does help that we've known each other so long. He'll just call me up and say, "Hey, I've got this movie," and he'll give me kind of the his basic thoughts. He's always got really good musical thoughts, not like specific, I want this theme and a theme to do this and this and this. He tells me the feeling he wants. He wants the overall vibe of the movie that he wants to achieve, and that's hugely helpful to me. I think music, one of the most important parts of a score is to help set the tone of a movie, and so he's really good at telling me what the tone is. And in this case, he did, early on, he made it clear this is very different from any movie we've done before. Battleship, big action movie, but then we went on to do two films based on true events. And so the approach to those was completely different. You have to treat it a bit or a lot more real than you would something like Battleship, the aliens attacking the world. So we did those, Lone Survivor, Deepwater. This Spenser he described to me as a comedy at first, which I said, oh really? I didn't expect that because I knew basically what it was, but I knew of the books and the TV show, but this is, I didn't expect comedy to come out of Peter Berg's mouth, but once he showed me some of the film, I totally got what he meant. It's at its heart is definitely a Peter Berg movie. It's really tough and gritty and really dark in places, and he tells the story really well. But there's a whole lot of jokes and a lot of light moments. He told me I don't ever want the film to feel too heavy to the audience, too heavy, too serious. I want them to always be able to laugh, and so that was it was a lot of discussion back and forth to find that line between, there's a murder that's happened and Spenser's trying to figure out the line between that and, all of these jokes and humorous scenes that happen, and being able to go back and forth between them without, sounding all disjointed and like we have two different scores going. That helped me decide upon the instrumentation, no orchestra. That just felt inappropriate for whatever reason. It wasn't that kind of movie. Went with a lot of guitars and synthesizers, and which he responded well to, because those you can tweak to be a little bit comical and then a little bit dark and kind of go back and forth pretty seamlessly, I hope anyway. But yeah, so that's how we worked on this one. He was, and the editor, I have to mention, Mike Sale. He was really helpful as well.
Oh,
Between the three of us, we because it was a tricky tone, even with them editing the film, there was, one joke too many and felt like too much, and thought they did a great job walking the line of
oh yeah.
comedy and thriller.
I mean, it felt well balanced. I mean, there is a
Right,
comedic aspect, a thriller aspect, action,
right,
and the story is told well. So it's never over the top, or I never felt it contained too much of a certain element. I never felt there
right,
was too much comedy or too much action.
right.
So it felt proper. And Peter Berg and also his leading man, Mark Wahlberg, they have worked together a number of times. And did the three of you exchange any ideas as to how the sound of Spenser should come alive, so to speak?
Yeah, I I was joking to someone the other day that I think I hold the record. I might hold the record of scoring the most Mark Wahlberg films. I don't know. I'm up to 6 or 7 at this point. I don't know. So I know him not personally well. I've met him several times, but I know him as a character, as an actor quite well. And I to answer part of your question, he did not get involved in the score. He never really does. He's so busy. He's by the time I get involved, he's off shooting something else. But Pete and him, they're like brothers. So Pete knows what he likes, and he knew that, or both he and Pete wanted this character to be kind of a tough, because he is. He's a boxer. He's an ex-cop. He's kind of this more of a street guy, but he's cool but not too cool. He still can be kind of goofy once in a while. So it was this interesting challenge to do a theme for him that I could use again in all these different ways of him being cool but also in the mystery side of things. So I ended up just with a little simple guitar theme, and which Pete seemed to respond to. Pete generally likes simple, sort of short themes, I guess. Few, not that many notes, but something that we can repeat, and just because a lot of times in these thrillers or action movies, you don't have a lot of time to play a theme. You just have a moment where Spenser looks at something and you play his theme, and you got to get out, or you change to something else for the next shot. There are some films out there that directed are much slower moving, and you can play these long themes over several minutes. But generally, the action films that I work on, there you have to be sort of in and out quickly. So, and Pete again, he likes the shorter themes. So this is just a little 3-note. It alternates 3, 4 notes, and yeah. So and again, it's on guitar. It felt right for this guy, this Boston, and also Pete. There's a lot of songs and a lot of classic rock songs.
Oh yeah.
So that helped me decide upon instrumentation as well. It's just sticking with more of a guitar rock vibe helped it all feel sort of cohesive.
Yeah, and the score in general, it never feels, let's say, boisterous in any way. It's often kind of quiet and also delicate at times, and also during the action sequences, it's never over the top or too loud or too bold, let's say. And but did you on this film also get inspired by the cinematography, let's say, and also the images of the city Boston?
Yeah. I always get a lot of inspiration from the images from anything I work on. And this film was shot by Tobias. He's Pete's longtime cinematographer. He always shoots fantastic looking images, and there's some really great sort of helicopter shots of the city, and it was funny. A lot musicians would come in, or various people I was working with throughout the process who were from Boston or had lived there or know people there, and they would always go, "Oh, I know that place, and I know that bar, and this and that." So, and I don't know if I've never been, and I don't know if Pete and Tobias specifically meant to film spots that people would go, "Oh yeah, that's very Boston," or if that's just the nature of Boston, I don't know. But all of my Boston friends seemed to respond really well to all the things they were seeing, and they show a bar where people are watching the Boston Red Sox. It's very Boston. So it's and I found that as we progress in the film, I started messing around with just big drum beats to play the action, or scenes when Spenser and Hawk are driving through the city, because it felt sort of cool and like you said, nothing over the top, because Pete doesn't like that, and I try not to do that as well. Try not to force things at the audience, especially in a film like this, where the story is the main thing, and it's not about big special effects or anything like that. It's just support the story, so the kind of the rhythm of the city, and as the score goes on, it becomes more and more rhythmic, and the city totally affected the way I did it. And that's probably another reason why I just took all of the orchestra out of my computer for that film.
Yeah.
I knew I wasn't going to need it.
Peter Berg if I'm informed correctly, also stressed that he intended to shoot as much in camera as he could,
Right.
avoiding the CGI traps, so to speak.
Hmm.
So kind of to opt for a more traditional approach. Does this
Yep.
also describe how he approaches musical emotion in a traditional sense as opposed to
Uh,
modern?
what would you say is the difference between a traditional emotion or sense of emotion in a movie versus modern? I'm just curious.
Well, modern scores to some
What?
extent tend to have less emotion.
Yes. Right. 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 Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Totally. That's exactly what I thought you were going to say. I just, yeah,
Haha.
they're not as. No, you're right. If you go back and watch a film in the 80s, every emotion is played really big, and a term we use in a lot is on the nose. It's like you see somebody, there's a big theme. You see somebody else, their theme comes in and it's huge, and that the score is doing all these different things. And you're totally right. For whatever reason, and I've thought about this a lot because it certainly obviously affects me, that directors have kind of gradually, at least the ones I work with, gradually wanted less of that. They want things to kind of stay not quite so dynamic and not quite so on the nose, I guess, so scory. Like, you watch a John Williams, like Raiders of the Lost Ark. John Williams is hitting every moment, basically, throughout an entire scene. He might hit 1,000 different things with the music. So that's traditional. And Pete definitely falls more into the modern, where he wants a cool vibe. He wants to set a tone, set a mood, let the music kind of bubble underneath. And, there's certainly things he'll want to hit, not too, not too over the top with that. And a lot of directors I work with are like that. But yeah, sorry, I totally get what you're asking now, and you're certainly right about that. A lot of that modern approach is definitely less big dramatic emotional moments, unless I suppose it's perhaps I don't see a lot of Marvel movies. I don't know if they have adopted that more modern approach as well. I kind of in my mind they go kind of more old school, but
Yes, I mean, it depends on the movie and who's scoring it and who's
right,
producing
right,
and
right.
directing. So it's always hard to describe. I mean,
Yeah,
basically,
they're all different.
modern approach doesn't equal less emotional approach.
Sure, yeah,
It always depends. I mean, there are a couple of Marvel movies that have a very good score actually, and I feel like it's kind of quote unquote old school.
yeah,
And some other Marvel movies have a more modern approach, hybrid approach, but
right,
it's still very well produced and written and also
right,
emotional. So
yeah,
it's always a double-edged sword, and it's hard to kind of point fingers as to
right.
whose fault it is. And yeah, I mean it's that's what makes the business so interesting and also
Yeah,
tricky at the same time.
yeah, right. Well, yeah, and after working for however many years with Pete, I know that he is more of a modern sort of director and wants and so I approach things with that in mind. And even towards the end, there were spots in Spencer where I had written the cue, and we get to the end, the final big stage, and we're kind of listening to the whole movie. And Pete says, "I think that cue could be simpler." And I don't think he was wrong at all. There were just there were several scenes where we just took elements out. So it's more of a rhythmic thing as opposed to maybe there was a theme there on top. And it's just, it's the way he likes to. Any director I work with, I'm not unless I feel really strongly that the music is doing something specific for that scene, and taking something out is going to hurt the scene, which I will convey to the director, which
Yeah.
and I do that occasionally. But generally speaking, I'm there to help them. I'm not if they want to take something out and they think it makes the scene more effective, then that's I'm not going to
Yeah,
argue unless I
absolutely.
really think so. I think he was right in the times that it happened here. It's just again, you didn't want to be too He didn't want the music doing too much. He wanted to keep it very
Yeah,
simple, and
I see.
so.
Yeah, but generally speaking, Steve, do you find it more difficult these days to make a bold musical statement? Do you think that fewer directors actually want that? Thematic approach in the films you work on. You know, do you feel like you need to kind of really convince them to have a theme, to have a broad palette, a versatility, a bold musical statement, thematic variety? What do you think about that?
Yeah, it really all depends on the film. Uh, these two films just happen more so Spencer, and like they have themes, but they're sort of simpler, less kind of in your face themes than I would say right for something like the Transformers,
Oh
which has
yes,
tons of big, huge themes, but that the nature of the film is so much different
yes, yeah.
than the films I've done recently. Even going back to Skyscraper, there are themes in there, but they're from the beginning. The director told me this is The Rock is not an action hero in this film. He's we want to treat him like he's a guy who just wants to save his family. That's he's not a superhero, and so that's how we treated him musically, and it's similar with Bloodshot.
Oh
It's
yes,
he is a superhero, but he's doing it for the love of his wife. He's not doing it because he's trying to save the world or something like that. But so it really does depend on the type of film and what the director wants for that film, and it's just happened. So had my last three movies been other films, I would have written completely different scores with big huge themes or whatever. And in fact, the next movie I'm doing is the director and I have already talked a lot about going kind of old school. So it's going to be fun. I think that's kind of getting back into that style. But it's just what I get asked to do really dictates what I do. Obviously,
oh absolutely.
I'm a hired hand, and
Yes,
and
of course, of course. And needless to say, Bloodshot is a different movie than Spenser Confidential and has a different
yeah,
sound. And Bloodshot also features your kind of delicate string sound, mixed with the electronics and very
right,
beautifully balanced. And but the films couldn't be more different.
yeah, yeah. No, totally. It was because of the crazy schedules in this town. They both films moved around, and I had to bounce back and forth between them occasionally last year, and but it
Okay.
was kind of a good thing just because one was but they were so different from each other. It was kind of cool to say, all right, today I need to go work on this Spencer, and my or this week I need to work on Spencer, and the sound, my sound
Yeah.
palette is completely different. Everything is different, so it was sort of cool to do that for a while, and then when Bloodshot came back from their little break, and then I go back to that, it was like, oh yeah, back to the big electronics and big orchestral sounds, and it was kind of if I had to do two movies kind of bouncing around like that, I would prefer that they be very different,
Oh,
just to keep it
absolutely.
interesting.
Absolutely. I mean, a back-to-back approach, so to speak, and
Yeah,
yeah, it's very very interesting. Working on one picture 1 week and then go back to another, and yeah, but also
right.
I think it can be very stifling and stressful, kind of not to lose focus, but it keeps you on your
Yeah,
toes, and I think that's also what you want as a composer
yeah,
slash
that's right.
filmmaker, because to me a composer is also a filmmaker. So if I may ask, I mean, you had been working with Michael Bay for so many years, and
Yeah,
will you be working with him again? Can you disclose that?
but yeah, I hope to work with him again. He's obviously responsible for sort of putting me on the map of film composers by hiring me early on in my days for The Island and Transformers and these things.
Oh yes, I mean The Island is one
So,
of his best movies, I believe. Yeah.
I know. Yeah, I was sad that it just didn't, for whatever reason, quite. Now everyone has seen it, I think. I still, to this day, get people going, I love The Island. I just saw it on HBO. I'd never seen it before. But for whatever reason, it didn't quite do at the box office what his films normally do. And I think if I there were some issues of people not quite understanding what it was. I remember Michael coming in one day saying
Mm-hmm.
that a lot of the public thought it was a reality show just because of the way it was being marketed. Like, and I thought, oh my God, I could totally understand that. Some of the trailers made it look like, or the marketing made it look like there were people stuck on an island and they had to get off. And I don't know, maybe Big Brother was big at that time or something, but there was a big confusion of what the movie was actually about.
Okay.
And then from that point on, they shifted the promotional material completely. It was, I don't know if anyone noticed, but there's a point at which all the ads, all the posters, everything changed because we realized there was this problem of people not knowing, is this a movie or what is this? Even though, you see Ewan McGregor's face and Scarlett Johansson, but there was confusion, and that's not what you want when you're trying to get people to go see a movie. But
Yeah.
but I'm glad people are seeing it now and have seen it, and I've heard that many times that it's their favorite Michael Bay movie.
Yeah, I think it's one of his best. I mean, it's not my favorite of his. I think my favorite might be, well, The Rock.
Oh my God, yeah. I mean, that's a legendary film. That's right when I started my career at Hans's place. So I kind of saw a bit of that happening, and it was like, wow, this music is amazing in the movie, and I was just blew my mind.
I see. That must have been a time when you also started assisting Harry, right?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I don't know if I was working for him at that time, but I definitely knew him, and I'd have to check the dates on that. It's all a kind of a blur. I was definitely working for Harry during Armageddon when that was going on. But
yeah,
The Rock, I think I was working for Harry during The Rock.
The Rock was 95 and Armageddon was released in 98, I believe. Yeah.
Okay, right. I was just starting with Harry around The Rock, I think. It was, again, it's all a blur, it's so long ago, but it was I remember it was just craziness. Both of those films. Armageddon was probably still the most difficult film I've ever been a part of. Just the amount of hours spent working in the studio, and it's just such a huge movie.
Oh, and a huge score to boot. I mean,
yes.
The official release still doesn't even compare to the score as it was written for the movie. So
right. Yeah, I'm not surprised. There's so much music in there.
Great score, absolutely.
Yeah,
love that one.
Yeah, a lot of great people worked on that. Trevor Rabin, one of my favorite people.
Oh yeah,
writes some terrific themes.
Absolutely. And Steve, I hope you get to work on many more terrific pictures in the future, and I'm looking forward to hearing many more of your scores.
Thank you.
Is there anything else you would like to add on either Bloodshot or Spenser or your career in general?
I don't think so. I just hope everyone out there is okay.
Steve, thank you so very much for taking so much time out of your busy schedule. I really appreciate that, and I hope we get to do many more interviews in the future.
Yeah, I hope so too. Well, I've got a couple things coming up that who knows when they'll happen at this point, but
yeah,
once they do and come out, then yeah, definitely we could talk again.
Okay, great. I would love to, and I'm looking forward to your future projects, and I hope you stay safe and healthy, and of course I wish you just the best, and thanks again. It was a pleasure talking to you again, and let's talk soon.
Good, perfect. You stay well too. Thanks, Michael.
Take care. Bye, Steve.